Peace and love. Peace and love, man. Brother Isaiah. Again with another video for the conscious brothers, conscious sisters in the conscious community, keeping the struggle because we know that it's through the struggle that we grow. Also, I like to say that it is, in fact, a slow process for progress and that the race is not to those who can move swift. It's to those who can remain dutiful. Stay in this for the long haul. Y'all already know that my videos, they never constitute legal advice. I'm not a legal counsel. I'm not an attorney. Just your brother. I just share with you education and information about my walks and about my travels. Throughout my journey called life, I like to extend these honors to you. Because when you're honoring man and you're honoring woman, you're honoring yourself. I like to give adoration to Allah, the Most High, who is the head temple of my life, and extend that same love, courtesy, and acknowledgement to all of his messengers and prophets. Peace to all of you, beloved brothers and sisters, and grand rising to the chosen people of God. To everyone today, myself, blessed, I'm constantly unfolding in the womb of these two different worlds, taking everything in step stages and degrees. Today, I want to go over some stuff. I want to talk about a few things. As always, it's always about clarity. The more you comprehend the information, the better it is for you to take action. You really can't act on something that you don't fully comprehend. So, comprehension is one of the key elements into being able to interpret the information. When you're dealing with financial documents, instruments, and things like that, you have to learn the language financially. See, they never taught us finance in school. They never taught securities in school. They never taught about security interests. I recall taking the GED test. I don't never recall anything about negotiable instruments. I don't recall ever learning anything about uh, a secured party, uh, business credit, personal credit. Uh, I can recall. I don't recall learning any of those things. Y'all give me a second. Let me go turn off this television real quick. Okay. Now, back to what I was saying. Uh, when I was in school, I don't recall them ever teaching uh, about a taxpayer, what is a taxpayer, and how taxpayers work, right? I don't recall ever learning about what an individual is, what a person is, what a partnership, what an LLC, what a corporation. I don't recall none of those aspects ever being taught to me in school at all. And none of my ventures. right? Now I got to question why wasn't that curriculum specifically taught to me, because I believe that in private schools, they learn about these type of things. If you look up some of the universities like Yale and you look into the student forums and stuff like that, you will see assignment of rights, contracts. You'll see all the stuff that they teaching them in these schools. But why we ain't getting taught that? Is it two different classes of people? So, I say all that to say that if you want to educate your child, you got to be the one to educate them, because they're not going to educate them. They only going to give them enough information for them to work in their factories and help them maintain whatever they've been maintaining for such a long time. If you want your children to learn truth about how to become wealthy, how to deal with the system that we living in, you got to educate them, because they're not going to get none of the information from none of these schools that they go to. A lot of the teachers and staff don't even know. A lot of times you might wake up every day and commerce might seem like it's an everyday thing to you, but to everybody else, they don't see that. So-called conscious community, all of those who affirm to be conscious, right? It's a difference between the living and the dead. Yay, the dead can't comprehend the living. They don't mix. It's like salt water and fresh water. They don't mix, man. You know. So when you understand those elements, you realize like most of the righteous ones are those that strive on that righteous path. You're on a lonely path. You're not gonna have many friends. You might have many followers. You see what I'm saying? But you're not gonna have too many people that's willing to sacrifice to live the type of lifestyle that you live, to restrain yourself from certain things of the world that everybody else participate in. You don't want no McDonald's? What's wrong with McDonald's? Oh man, what you mean you don't eat no Burger King? Man, we can't go to Burger. What? You want to get some berries, some fruit? You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people, they taste buds, and then purposely, right? You got to understand too, like the fruits, the vegetables, it don't even taste like it did when we were young. I recall apples used to be so satisfying to the taste. I remember I was a child, man, I used to take it, and that apple be so juicy, so delicious. It's not like that anymore. It's like when you bite the apple, it don't even, it's different. You know what I'm saying? It's like a lot of things, like they took nutrients or they took certain things out of the fruits and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So we eating the fruits, but we're not getting the full benefit of what we should get, like what we would get if it came directly from the earth. When you manufacturing food and you growing it in factories to make it grow quicker and faster for production of commercial product, then it loses certain benefits. So us as the people of this soil, we have to go back to what we know. You know what I'm saying? God gave us everything to do that which we have the rights to do. We got to start back growing in our own backyards. All the fruits, the vegetables, the things that we need for our families and things like that. We got to start being more mindful of what type of products you're purchasing out of these factories and stuff, because you got to understand they sell products, they into business, and business ain't necessarily always about your health. You know what I'm saying? When you're trying to make profit and you selling a product, and this product is a product manufactured, generated, and produced by our company. See what I'm saying? So you can't say we doing wrong, because we We ran all this through certain tests and everything to make sure that if you eat it, you don't just die right there on the spot. You know what I'm saying? But it got certain stuff in there that could cause harm to you over time. But they're not telling you that it's in all of their products and all the other products. So you're taking it in all the time. You see what I'm saying? So when you start looking at it like that, you got to realize you are magnificent. We are magnificent. We are very magnificent people. And I don't even want to call us people. We are the children of the Most High. So we are little G's. We are children of God. So if we made in the image and the likeness of God, then we can't say we man, because God is not just man. You know what I'm saying? So if you made in the image and the likeness, then and God is not a favor of flesh, He's not a favor of persons. So when you say you made in the image and the likeness of God, and then you look in the mirror and you look at your flesh and you saying that that image that you see of this body is God, you gotta actually reconsider that, because God's not a favor of persons. So He said, "Greater is He that is in you than he who you see in the world." So why would you say that what you see in the world is a God rather than He who is in you? You see what I'm saying? So it's another self. It's another self here. And that self here is the self that we have to tap into. All right, is that inner being within. You got to come to reasoning with self, because this is the temple inside. And inside is truly where you live. And it's truly where all the vital organs and all the vital things that give you livelihood are stored. So if I was the devil and I could deceive you right at birth, the first thing I would want to do is create a world of illusion that will nurture and cater only to this, right? And then I will project imagery, subliminal suggestions. I would use, we studied the human uh, psychology. They studied everything, rhythm, everything about how we work. And they create a whole world or a system generated toward invoking us to participate or act on certain things based off what they're doing with these commercials, with the televisions and everything. And it's been really working, but it's starting to fall off. They're starting to lose power. People are starting to wake up and starting to see what's really going on. We starting to realize that it's a lot of evil involved in a lot of things that's going on, and it's dressed up to look like it's good. It's like, y'all ever heard the story where they say that, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't even really remember the story, but it says something about the truth and the lie, right? Doing something, and the truth took off his clothes and said he was gonna go take a swim. So when the truth went into the water and started swimming, took his clothes off, the naked lie pulled up and put on the true clothes and was a well-dressed lie and was running around posing and acting like he was the truth, but he was a well-dressed lie waiting on the naked truth to catch him and expose him for the real liar that he truly is. And that's kind of like what we going through now. You know what I'm saying? We dealing with a person he's a well-dressed liar. You know what I'm saying? And he dressed himself up real well, but the naked truth is catching up to him. And he's about to be exposed for everything that he truly is. You know what I'm saying? And man, listen, we living in a very serious time, but we're living in a great time, because of all the information, all the things that are coming out, and the access that we have to learn information. Certain things like my great grandmama didn't have, she didn't know about her interests. She never learned. about, certain aspects of her Social Security account, you know what I'm saying, or her legal identity in reference to who she truly is as a woman, in reference to how the system has, you know, identified her under some kind of title. So when you realize that we living in a time now where we able to have knowledge of things that was hidden from us for quite some time, and now we have an opportunity to actually learn as much as we possibly can and utilize this information to bring ourselves out of these conditions that we are in. And most of the conditions that we are in come from us directly. It's nobody else causing us um, to do these things. It's the miseducation and the lack of information and your actions and your perception of things which causes the outcome. What you do, you are the one putting that out there. So let's keep that in mind. But I'm gonna go over something real quick, share some things, as I always do. Y'all know I always try to share a little something and talk to the people. So I'm gonna be coming from 12 USC 5481. All right, let's get into this. So, except as provided in this title for the purposes of this title, the following definitions shall apply, right? An affiliate means a person that controls, is controlled by, or is under common control with another person, all right? And the term bureau means the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection, business of insurance, okay? Think of that phrase, business of insurance. So business could be some type of insurance where you're being insured through some type of business venture, right? But it says the business of insurance means writing of insurance, right? Or reinsuring of risk by insurance, like when you get what they call it when they renew a policy or something, reinsure, including all acts necessary to such writing or reinsuring, right? And the activity relating to the writing of insurance or reinsuring of risk conducted by persons who act as or officers, directors, agents, or employees of insurance, right? Or who are other persons authorized to act on behalf of such persons, right? So it's talking about writing of insurance, and they're writing insurance or reinsuring a certain person, right? And then they talking about the person who acts as the officer, the director, the agent, or the employee, right? So let's go into it. Now, the consumer means an individual or an agent. So a consumer can be either the individual itself, or it can be the agent, or the trustee, or a representative acting on behalf of an individual. Okay. So most of us, when we act as the consumer, we act as the individual itself, right? But you have the right to also act as a trustee, right? So as the individual, that would be us, the natural person. The agent, right, will be the legal entity, the trustee or the representative acting for the individual. So the representative is the taxpayer. The taxpayer acts on behalf of the natural person in all contracts and agreements. funds. So the representative or the represented person is the taxpayer. Let's keep going. Consumer financial product or service. The term consumer financial product or service means any financial product or service that is described in one of the more categories under, right? Now, paragraph 15 and is offered, provided for use by consumers primarily for personal, family, or household purposes. Or clause B, or clause 1, 3, and 4, or 10 of paragraph 15A is delivered, offered, or provided in connection with a consumer financial product or service referred to in paragraph A, right? So it's talking about a financial product, right? Now it says a covered person means any person that engage in offering, right? So you got somebody offering or providing a financial product or service, and an affiliate of a person described in subparagraph A, if such affiliate acts as a service provider to such person. So any of their affiliates, right, that services them, like a lot of times they be having agents and people that receive their contracts, like when you give it to them, they store it with a certain company who, stuff like that. They have like a holding company and things like that, a managing company stuff. They usually have like 3 or 4 companies. Okay. All right. So credit, the term credit means the rights granted by a person to a consumer to defer payment of a debt. All right. So usually when you receive credit, right, usually a person is approving you for credit, and usually the approved credit is what you use to pay the debt off. That's when they say defer payment of the debt, you're using the approved balance to pay off the instrument itself, right? So it says incur debt and then defers payment, right? Reduces payment. To defer a payment is to reduce it, you know what I'm saying? To offset it to a later date, by applying its value. Or purchase property or services and defer payment for such purchase. Deposit taking activity. The term deposit taking activity means acceptance of deposits, right? Maintenance of deposits accounts, or provisions of services related to the acceptance of deposits, or the maintenance of deposit accounts. So deposit taking activity is like, in order for them to maintenance your account, to hold your account, to store your account, they have to take it as if it's a deposit taking activity in order to receive it, to maintenance it, to hold it. They receive it as a deposit of like an account receivable. So they receive it as a receivable. Okay. You got to remember that it's a deposit taking activity. Every time you open up an account, you're depositing account information with that institution. And it says the acceptance of funds. So they're accepting funds, the provision of other services related to the acceptance of funds. Okay. Or the maintenance of member share accounts. The maintenance of member share accounts. So when you open up like a credit union account, that's considered as a share account. You are a shareholder, and you are a shareholder of a share account with the bank, right? And the member who holds that share is the one that is insured under the account. So it's a member share account by a credit union, or the receipt of funds or the equivalent thereof, as the Bureau may determine by rule or order, received or held by a covered person. A covered person is an insured company, like any bank that's advertising FDIC insurance, or credit union, or any other covered person that's covered and insured, right? Or an agent or a covered person for the purposes of facilitating a payment or transferring funds or value of the funds between a consumer and a third person. So usually it's the bank, and that's what I've been telling y'all. The bank is usually the one who stands between you and the other party in reference to the purchase of goods. You got to learn how to deal with your bank relationship in order to settle obligations through your paying agent. You know what I mean? Designated transfer date, all right? And the term designated transfer date means the date establishes on the section. Let's go to that section, right? Let's see. Extension of time. All right. There's something else. I just wanted to see what it was talking about. All right. Now, for the purpose of this part, the term financial protection functions means all authority prescribed, rule, or issue, ordered, or guidelines pursuant to. Hold up, I wonder how did I get hurt? Wait a minute, let me go back. So let me get this right, y'all. Somehow I jumped around. That happened. All right, here I go. I'm right here. So the director means the director of the Bureau and Electronic Conduct Service, Conduit Service. The electronic conduit service means the provisions by a person of electronic data transmission, routing, uh, immediate or transit storage or connection to a telecommunication system or a network, and does not include a person that provides electronic conduit services. When providing such services, the person selects or modifies the connection or the electronic data. All right, so it's talking about somebody who hook up, and these are just all different consumer laws, consumer mortgage act, all these different acts apply to consumers, right? All these acts, ownership, home ownership and equity protection act, right? The home mortgage disclosure act, right? We know what the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the Homeowners Protection Act, Fair Credit Reporting Act, right? All these different things, Consumer Leasing Act, Electronic Funds Transfer Act, Equal Opportunity Act, right? All these different acts apply to the consumer. All those acts you want to get familiar with, because all those acts deal with the consumer protections. Uh, boom, 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 boom. Let me see, where was I? I want to look at the establishment. All right, so these is all the rules of the Bureau, credit bureaus, banks, but that ain't what I was looking for. All right, so this is the false claims, but this is not what I'm looking for. This false claims. Set off against a judgment. All right, so this is what I was looking for. All right, an assignment. All right, let me pull up some. All right, so what's the legal definition of a claim? All right, a claim is defined as a set of operative facts creating an enforceable, creating a right enforceable in court. It is often synonymous with the phrase cause of action. The claim can also be described as a legal declaration or a demand made by someone seeking compensation or alleging owed payments for a loss caused to them, typically based on a contract or a negligent tort. Essentially, it represents a legal assertion for reimbursement or compensation due to a loss or injury, right? All right, so now let's pull up something. I think it's 41 USC, or is it 71? Let me see real quick. Chapter 7. Let's see if that's it. Okay. So when you go to USC, let me see if I can find what I'm looking for. This is USC 41, chapter 71, right? And it's called contract disputes. Let me see. I'm trying to find. Man, this is taking forever. Now I don't know what this is all about, why it ain't loading and stuff like that. Let me go back. All right, so here we go. We got contract disputes. We're gonna go to the definitions, right? I'm just gonna show you something, right? Because what y'all gotta remember is that we under military occupation, right? The United States is a military organ, right? We under a military rule right now. They got eminent domain over the American people's land. They warn against us through commerce and civil matters. All right. Now look, the administrator means the administrator for the federal procurement policy appointment pursuant to section 1102 of this title, agency board of contract appeals. It's letting you know who these people are. It's the Armed Service Board, the Civilian Board, right? The Board of Contract Appeals in Tennessee Valley Authority, or a civilian. A claim from a civilian is very powerful. You know, this word civilian, that's what they don't want you using that word, claiming to be a civilian. The civilian is powerful, right? The Postal Services Board established under, and then it got the agency head. Some of these things we can go past, right? Now we get down to a contracting officer, right? The term contracting officer means an individual who, by appointment, in accordance with applicable regulations, has the authority to make and administer contracts, to make determinations and findings with respects to contracts, and includes an authorized representative of the contracting officer, acting within the limits of the representative authority. Then it says a contractor means a party to a federal government contract other than the federal government. And then it goes into the executive head's misrepresentations of facts. All right, so let me go back. All right, so we're going to go to the decisions by a contracting officer. Submission of a contractor's claim, right? Contractor's claim. All right, let me pull up something real quick. I'm gonna show you something. Watch this. United States Code concerning a contractor. What is the definition of a contractor? So the contractor, so you got an independent contractor, right? So let me go because a lot of times they don't want to pull it up for you, but a contractor is somebody that's in a contract with the federal government using a federal agent, but they are not part of the federal government. You know what I'm saying? Even though they're using a federal contract, right? Which is a taxpayer. All right. Now it says submission of a contractor's claim to a contracting officer. The contracting officer is usually the one you enter into the contract. And in the sale of goods, it tell you that property is transferred from one living person to another living person. So when you transferring rights, titles, you got to send that to a living person, right? Somebody that's able to accept it, right? So now it says each claim by a contractor against the federal government relating to the contract shall be submitted to the contracting officer for a decision. So you making the claim that the obligation on the contract is a government obligation in which the government is obligated to grant full faith and credit, and you're claiming your rights to receive or to have the debt redeemed against the United States to have it paid for lawfully and lawful money. But you're sending that claim to the contractor so that he can submit it to the government on your behalf. So it's an assignment to him, right? Now, the contractor's claim in writing. Each claim by a contractor against the federal government relating to the contract shall be in writing. Contracting officer to decide federal government's claim, okay? Because all these agencies, they work on behalf, they're contracting agents for the government. When you get electricity, you're dealing with a contracting agent for the government. The government is the provider of all services through its contracting agents and its affiliates. So when it took me a while to learn this stuff, man. You got to really study to want to know the truth so that you can know what you're doing. Because when I started doing this, I didn't know what to do. I was scared to do anything. I ain't even messing with no IRS. IRS, you think IRS, you think big boys, you know what I'm saying? But it's crazy how they got us under such an illusion that we be scared to do anything, man. Scared to use our own no fraud. You can't never be committing fraud with your own information. You know what I mean? So I had to learn a lot of stuff. I had to come out of fear of a lot of things that was falsely taught to me. I had to realize and take my faith back to the creator and remember what he said. Put your trust in nobody but him and fear nobody but him. And when you realize that he is the essence of who you are, you don't fear nobody but yourself and what you will and what you won't do through the power of your creator. Right now, it says, now, time for submitting the claim in general. Each claim by a contractor against the federal government relating to the contract, and each claim by the federal government against the contractor relating to the contract shall be submitted within 6 years after the occurrence of the claim. All right. So the government is making claims against you on those contracts. Subpart A of this paragraph does not apply to claims by the federal government against contract that is based on a claim by the contractor involved. The authority of this subsection in subsection C1, D, and E does not extend to claims, dispute for penalties or forfeitures prescribed by the statutes or regulations that are other federal agencies and specifically authorized to administer, settle, or determine. Certification of claims requirements generally for a claim of more than 100,000 made by a contractor. The contractor shall certify that the claim is made in good faith, that the supporting data are accurate and complete to the best of the contractor's knowledge and belief, and that the amounts requested accurately reflect the contract adjustment. See, an adjustment is when you're trying to adjust the balance between the principal and the interest, because the principal is what you issue, but the interest is what's owed on the principal. So instead of you paying it, you already owed an interest because you issued a note with both. So you can actually demand that it be leveraged and that the government provide the financing in order to settle that debt. You see what I'm saying? Because you're claiming it as a due government obligation. That is something that the government is responsible to provide financing for under the full faith and credit. So your rights to redeem it and demand that it be paid in lawful money, you know what I'm saying, instead of you having to repay it with currency. That's the whole purpose in us making the demands. But we making a claim against the government, saying that the government owes us the obligation, or we are transferring or making that obligation payable to the government, and then assigning our rights against the government to the contractor to demand that it be submitted to the government on our behalf and demand that it be paid. See what I'm saying? Things like that, right? The certifier is authorized to certify the claim on behalf of the contractor. So the contractor is always going to be the entity that you're using. It could be a partnership, it can be an LLC. It don't matter, what contractor you're using, because a contractor is just the legal organ that's entering into the agreement, and the officers are the ones using that entity is the one who certifies that person's obligations, right? Now, who may execute certification? The certification required by paragraph 1 may be executed by an individual authorized to bind the contractor with respects to the claim. So you got to learn how to bind your taxpayer. Your individual as the person authorized to certify for that individual person. So it's a learning process. It's not like I said, it's not to the swift, it's to those that do due diligence and take out the time necessary to learn the information, right? So that they can operate effectively in reference to Because a lot of times, if you've been making claims, disputes on the contracts, right? And you wonder why you're not getting nowhere, they say your dispute is invalid, or they keep going like you never really even made a dispute. Could it be that you're not making the right kind of dispute? Could that be it? Could it be that maybe you should be making a claim against the government and then submitting that claim to that contracting officer, or that officer you select in that company on behalf of your claim against the government to support for funds that have not been applied? You see what I'm saying? So I'm just trying to show, you know what I'm saying? Because it's one thing to say a thing, but it's another thing when you can show and prove, that what you're saying is true and correct. I don't want to argue with people or do anything like that. I don't have time for stuff like that. I let the information speak for itself. You can read, you can see what's on the screen, right? Now, failure to certify or defective certification, a contracting officer is not obligated to render a final decision on a claim of more than, right, 100,000 that is not certified in accordance with paragraph 1. If within 60 days after the receipt of the claim, the contracting officer notifies the contractor in writing of the reason why any attempted certification was found to be defective, right? A defect in the certification of the claim does not deprive the court or the agency board of jurisdiction over the claim prior to the entry of a final judgment by the court. A decision by an agency board or the court or the agency board shall require defective certification to be corrected. So if your claim is over a certain amount and you don't certify it to make the claim, that's what they're talking about. You got to know that you got to certify certain claims when they over a certain amount. Then it talks about fraudulent claims and then the liability of the contractor. If the contractor is unable to support any part of the contractor's claim, and it is determined that the inability is attributable to the misrepresentation of facts or fraud by the contractor, then the contractor is liable to the federal government for an amount equal to the unsupported part of the claim plus all of the federal government's costs attributable to reviewing the unsupported part of the claim. Liability under this paragraph shall be determined within 6 years of the commission of misrepresentation of facts, right? Let me see something. Misrepresentation means a false statement of substantive facts or a conduct that leads to the belief of a substantive fact material to proper understanding of the matter in hand, made with the intent to deceive or to mislead, right? So that's why they say all your claims have to be supported by affirmation of facts. You can't make a claim and not have proof of your rights to the claim. So that's why I say one of the most important parts is to gain understanding of what you're doing. Because if you don't understand what you're doing, you don't even know you're doing stuff and don't know what you're supposed to be saying, you know what I'm saying? And you just all over the place. And nobody should have to hold your hand. You can watch a video and give a couple of likes, shares, whatever. It's cool. But at the end of the day, if you're not going back through this information on your own and studying it to get an understanding, a better, thorough understanding for yourself, then you cheating yourself out of what you deserve. You see what I'm saying? Then my thing is to take you to the water and kind of go through things with you a little bit just to help you get a better understanding of what it is that I'm presenting. So in the end, you're supposed to go back. Hey, let's go back. Even talk to your little chat about this chapter, what it pertains to. just to make sure you look accurate on what you're doing, making sure everything lines up right, right? Before you take any actions, right? Now check it out. But I'm gonna put it together for you. Don't you say nothing. Don't you say nothing. I got you. You right there. The one who don't think that listen, I'm about to show you something, boy. I'm about to show you today, boy. Hmm. Y'all go get them webinars, man. I got a video recording special going on, man, where I'm opening up all the prior webinars to where you can watch those webinars, and at the end you get to ask questions. I get to answer any of your questions pertaining to any of the information you watched in the webinar. We just did the basic. This was when we was operating under the People's Remedy and stuff like that. So we going through a lot of these webinars, and we coming up. So if you want to get in and you want to watch those webinars that you ain't never get a chance to, this the perfect time for you to get this special we got going on. That way you can watch all of them in series, and then like they just watch this one, the next one that they watch, it's gonna be on something else. We gonna get like all the banking webinars, all the car webinars, all the different webinars that we did. You get a chance to come in, get that information, watch those webinars, and then at the end, you'll get to ask me questions. Some of the webinars is 4 hours, stuff like so. It's a lot of information, and there's a lot of people asking questions, different things. So if you wanna be a part of that, go to buildingbetterminds.info. Look for it, man. I'm telling you. You don't want to miss that information. Some of that stuff is vital. You got to have it. It's going to keep it real with you. Now, it says that the contents of his decision, the contracting officer's decision shall state the reason for the decision reached and shall inform the contractor of the contractor's rights as provided in this chapter, specify specific findings of facts are not required if made. Specific findings of facts are not binding in the subsequent proceedings, right? So all this right here is dealing with, how the claims is made. Submit the claim shall be issued for reasonable time in accordance with the regulations, right? Then it's talking about the tribunals, fair decisions required, periods, final decisions, unless appeal, right? So all this deals with requests for dispute, all of this dealing with the contract, right? Let me see real quick before I go into the other section that I'm going to. I think it's something else on here I want to see. Contractors' rights to appeal decision, blah. All right. And that also applies for like contractors that's like registered to sam.gov and all of that too. It really applies a whole lot more to those individuals more than anything because a lot of them are independent contractors. All right, so now that brings me to assignment of claims, right? And a debt is considered to be a claim, right? All right, so in legal terms, debts are considered to be claims, right? Now, the reason why I'm showing this is because you got to know this, all right? Debts are considered claims due to their enforceable nature, right? When a debtor fails to pay a sums agreed upon in a contract, the creditor has the legal rights to recover the amount owed, right? This is akin to a claim, and it involves a direct obligation and the right to take legal actions to enforce payment. The distinction between debts and claims is important in legal proceedings as it affects the enforceability and priority of the claim. So you got to understand that a debt is an enforceable claim. So when they issue you a debt and you don't accept it and it remains in his possession as the one who issued it, and because you ain't accept and then reissue it, then he has an enforceable claim against you. Or you accept paying him the debt, not understanding you had the rights to take ownership and then issue the debt to him and enforce your rights against him to pay you the claim, the debt. Because now you got a claim on him for the same debt. So that's what it's all about, right? Understanding the contract, right? Now check it out. In this section, an assignment means a transfer or an assignment of any part of a claim against the United States government or any interest in the claim, or the authorization to receive payment for any part of the claim, right? And we just gonna stop right there. Like we can talk about this right here for hours. For hours. If we let's talk about that. An assignment. So a consumer has to do a specific act. I wonder what that specific act the consumer has to do. That, you know, when you're reading in the contract act, it'd be like the consumer has to do a specific act in order to secure the goods. I wonder. I wonder what that is. Hold up, let's keep reading though. Never mind me. I'm just full of myself. You hear me? Now it says in this session, the assignment means a transfer or an assignment of any part of a claim. And I showed you that a claim is a debt, right? Against the United States. And then I just showed you the contract disputes, right? Right? Or any interest in the claim. And the authorization to receive payment for any part of that claim, right? An assignment may be made only after the claim is allowed. So let's look this up. I'm gonna show you. Watch this. I'm gonna show you. See, this is how I think, right? Because watch this. When is hold up. Watch this. I'll show you how I'm looking it up. When is a claim allowed in legal terms? You see, because that's a phrase, right? So what I learned is I learned how to look up phrases too, right? When I read something and it say, "Oh, wait a minute, I want to know what does that really mean," right? A claim is allowed in legal terms when it meets necessary criteria to be recognized and auctionable within the legal system. This typically involves so so when the claim is officially enforceable. So usually it's when it becomes it when the claim is allowed is when it's legally enforceable, when it has been approved and signed and it meets the complete criteria to be enforced or used. So that's what makes it a claim enforceable when it becomes allowed to be used. So let's go back. Now, so a claim is allowed. So the claim is allowed when you apply for the loan, right? When you apply for the loan, you're applying for a United States loan. Why? Because the United States is the supplier of all currency. All currency is supplied by the United States government or the Federal Reserve System, which is the United States, not the United States of America or the Department of the United States Treasury, right? because you're talking about lawful money when you're coming from the treasury, right? But when you're dealing with the United States, any loan extended to you in the United States is United States currency, right? So if I go and I apply for a loan with a United States bank or in the United States territory, and I receive a personal loan agreement, that personal loan agreement was provided by the United States because that's currency, and all currency come from the U.S. government, right? So now that I know that I was approved by the U.S. through one of its agencies or one of its representatives to provide me with a United States loan, okay, of currency, right? Now, when we talking about this, and that's why the United States is involved, because you're dealing with funds of the US, but they have to be paid lawfully, right? An assignment may be made only after the claim is allowed. So after you get approved for the funds and you sign the agreement, now the claim, now you're allowed to do the act. It says the amount of the claim is decided. So when they decide how much you've been approved for, and the warrant for payment, what is a warrant for payment? I don't want to tell you what it is. I want you to see it for yourself, because once you learn how to do this, right? See, in the United States, let's click on this Wikipedia. All right, it says in financial transactions, a warrant is a written order by one person that instructs or authorizes another person to pay a specific recipient a specific amount of money or supply goods at a specific date, like amounts due, right? A warrant may or may not be negotiable, and it may be a bearer instrument that authorizes payment to the warrant holder, right? On demand or after a specific date. Governments and business may pay wages and other accounts by issuing warrants instead of checks. Okay. So now let's go back. Go back. All right. So they issue warrants. A warrant is a right to payment, a debt, right? Which is a warrant. It's an order for goods. It's an order for due amounts. It's a payment instrument. It's a bank note. Okay. Of a claim that has been issued. So the warrant, so once the claim has been allowed, because this is how you know that this is what they're talking about, because usually before they issue you the instrument for payment, that where you signing and you agreeing to pay the warrant, you usually got to get approved first, right? They come to you first and say, hey, you've been approved. Ain't that the claim being allowed when they say you approved, right? Put it together, put the pieces together, and you'll see what it is, right? So you get approved first, and then you get the instrument next, which is the warrant. They don't issue checks for credit. They issue debts, warrants, bills of lading, certificates of title, letters of credit. The assignment shall specify the warrant. So when you do your assignment, you should specify the instrument that you doing the assignment for. What instrument? What warrant are you assigning? Because the amounts that you're trying to assign should come from a specific instrument. Let's put it together and make it make sense, right? It must be made freely, and it must be attested by two witnesses. The person making the assignment, you, shall acknowledge it before an official who may acknowledge a deed. And the official shall certify the assignment. The certificate shall state that the official completely explained the assignment when it was acknowledged. And the assignment under this subsection is valid for any purpose, not some purposes, not one or two purposes. And let's keep going. Subsection does not apply to an assignment to a financing institution of money due or to become due under a contract, providing for payments totaling over 1,000. All right, so what that means? Subsection B, right? It's saying that subsection B of this section does not apply to an assignment to a financing institution, right? So when you do an assignment to a financing institution, right, of money due or to become due under a contract. So what is that telling me? What is that telling me? If I go out right now and I get approved for a lease and I got due rents that's due on the lease, I just got approved for it. And the rents are due. They ain't payable yet because the due date ain't there yet for the rents to actually become payable. Because on the due date, every rent has to be paid now. So before that date, they are due to be paid. So it's saying right here, it's saying an assignment to a financial institution of money due. So that means that if you got due balances due to you on a loan that you just received, you can do some kind of assignment of that due balance because it's due to you to pay it. So if you were to deposit those funds rather than hold them and then have to pay them, maybe you could receive credit for them, right? So, or to become due under the contract. So if you just entered into electricity, gas, water, and you know that amounts will be due for the services, you mean to tell me you could do some kind of assignment to the bank? As long as those amounts over a period of time would aggregate over $1,000, as long as they add up over a period of time over 1,000, and this is an open-end credit account, so it's going to constantly keep generating due balances. You mean to tell me I can assign? Oh look. It says the contract does not forbid the assignment. I ain't getting up from my electricity, water, or gas company saying I can't assign. Did you? I ain't even signed no contract. Did you? Think about it. So when you do an assignment to a financial institution of money due on a contract, so as soon as you get the contract and the due balances are due for you to pay, you can do an assignment of those due balances because they are already due. You just got to understand the terms of your agreement, right? So that's why I say study your contract, understand what you are receiving, understand what it means to be approved for credit. Then maybe it'll make more sense to you what actually you're receiving in your agreement, right? Now, the contract cannot forbid the assignment. So if you do receive a contract, you must read it. Take it home, whatever you got to do. But if you got electricity, gas, or you did something online or something like that, you can still do an assignment, right? Before the due date. It says, unless the contract expressly provides otherwise, the assignment is for the entire balance or the entire amount not already paid. So when you receive a contract, you're receiving an amount that's due that you have to pay, but the due amount that you have to pay ain't payable yet until like 30 days later. And then that's when they start billing you and collecting the due balance from you that you received in the agreement that you signed and agreed to pay back. So what this is saying that is if you have a due amount under a contract and it's aggregating over $1,000 or more, it's saying that you can assign that to your financial institution. as long as there's nothing forbidding the assignment in your agreement with that institution that you have the agreement with, that the balances are due from, you can assign every amount over to the bank for the total account. And then it says that unless the contract especially provides otherwise, the assignment is for the entire amount. So when you do the assignment, it's for the total balance. It's for all amounts due and payable under this agreement, right? This is a contractual right that you have. And you, as the holder of the account, the owner, holding the right to do the assignment. To do the assignment. You just got to be competent, right? It says it's made only to one party. So that's why I say you got to find a party that you assign it to, right? Except that it may be made to one party as an agent or a trustee for more than one party participating in the finance, right? So you can assign it to the bank, and then you can tell the bank that this assignment is for all the due balances, and that the bank as the holder should be responsible to pay the dealer, to pay the insurer, to pay for registration, whatever, because you are the assigner, right? Now, so if you got like 2 or 3 companies that have to get paid from this same transaction, you can assign one party as the agent to pay all the other parties under the assignment of rights, right? And it may not be reassigned, right? Once you assign at that time, it can't be reassigned. The assignee, which is the person who receives your assignment, files a written notice of assignment and a copy of the assignment with the contracting officials. Remember, I was telling you the contracting officers over the contract. Remember, we was talking about that when we was reading the contract disputes. They make a decision for the United States and all of that. So when you're reading this, you'll see how all of it all ties together. But you got to understand what you read. All right. It says, or the head of the agency, the surety on the bond or the contract. See, you don't know nothing about the surety on the contract because you didn't create the contract. You're the receiver, the insured person. But they have other agencies involved in that contract with you, right? And any dispersing official for the contract, right? And then when you go down here, right, it start talking about like during the war, the national emergency proclaimed by the president or declared by law and ended the proclamation of war, a contract with the Department of Defense, the General Service Administration, Department of Energy, when carrying out duties and powers performed carried out by Atomic Energy Commission or any or other agency the president designates may provide or may not change without consideration to provide the future that a future payment under the contract to the assignee, see, you, future payment is not subject to a reduction or a set off, right? Is not subject to a reduction or set off. A payment subsequently due under the contract, even after the war or emergency is ended, shall be paid to the assignee. See? Without reduction or set off for any liability. They saying, because a lot of people, what we do is we set off our debts or we discharge our debts. When we discharge our debts, then the lender who is supposed to pay us the balance of the debt gets off. We set off his obligation. He's no longer liable to performance of his duty because you discharge the debt. You, instead of you claiming the debt and demanding performance, you discharge the debt and you let him off the hook. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of people ain't teaching it right. It says to the government independent of the contract, or because renegotiation, fine, penalty, except that the amount may be collected or withheld under, or because the assigner does not comply with the contract. Taxes, Social Security contributions, or withholding or failing to withhold taxes or Social Security contributions arising from or independent of the contract. An assignee under this section does not have to make restitution of refund. See, he ain't got to refund you nothing or repay the amount received because of liability of the assigner to the government that arises from the independent that arises from or is independent of the contract. The government may not collect or reclaim money paid to a person receiving an amount under an assignment. So if you did an assignment and was to receive your rights, the government what? May not collect. What is the government collecting? What you didn't assign, man. Hold on, let me talk to you for a minute. I gotta talk to you. Let me stop sharing, man. Need I say more? Need I say more? When you don't do what you're supposed to do, when you've been assigned with a duty or property of the government, and you hold that property and you keep it, the government got the right to collect the balance from you because it was an extension of credit to you, and you held that credit. So they charging you for the credit that you're holding. You didn't use it. Because if you would have used it, you would have signed it, and then you would have been receiving those credits. And then by law, since you used the amount, the balance provided, the government can't collect it because it's being used. But when you don't use it for your personal, family, or your household benefit, then they get to collect on it. And that's any account you hold. So your rights to assign property for your benefit is critical, that you learn how to do assignments, that you learn how to identify yourself properly, and that you do things properly. It is a proper way that things must be done in accordance to what they require for you to have absolute authority, absolute rights and control. You have to have that first. You got to get this right. And once you get this right, this will right put everything else into perspective in the right channeling of how you should do something. Nobody can deprive you of a right that by law you are entitled to if you claim it. But if you don't know the right, or if you don't claim it correctly, then that will cause the other party to misinterpret your intention and deny, refuse, so forth, so on, because of the lack of understanding, and the communication between you and that party shows that you lack certain understanding of certain legal and financial terms, which are applicable to your relationship and his decision making in reference to allowing you to do certain acts or certain deeds in reference to claims you may be making. You see what I'm saying? So it's just something to think about. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. If you want to learn more about topics like what I went over today, you can always join us. We would love to have you as a member. More people, the merrier. The more minds, the more therapeutic things are, especially when you got individuals putting together like ideas. You know, it's one thing when you receiving information and you're not quite sure whether or not the information is correct, right? And you're unsure of whether or not you should act on it. But it's a different thing when you're reading the information and you're knowing that it's right. Maybe you weren't sure on how to act, and maybe somebody's giving you clarity, going over that information with you so that you will have a thorough, deeper, more profound understanding of the information. And that's what we want to do here at Building Better Minds. We want to build a better community, better minds and structures for our future, for all of our descendants and all of our heirs. So if that's what you're into, and then you're really looking for education that will serve you and your dependents for times to come, then join us. We welcome you with open arms. And with that said, I leave you as I always do in love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality for us all. You guys have a blessed and you have a wonderful day. Salute to all the real ones.